It's working with family members who are bereaved. So I don't work directly with patients who've got a terminal diagnosis. I work with the
I
family
see.
members.
I see.
Yeah. So I work in the family centre there.
I was going to say, I mean, that's because again, if you're doing that, because again, that's quite a focus, isn't it? I guess would you consider that specialism? Because I know there's because of
It's
a
become that,
massive
I think,
variety.
now. Yeah.
How
That's to
what?
learn that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, in terms of like say you've been doing it 7 years, do you find that there's been a development in the way that you see the bereavement process for people? I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
I think it's what you're saying. You learn from people, don't you? But what is it? Do you feel like you've kind of grown as from your first entry into that to where you are now?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, any good counsellor can do bereavement work because you just have to. Your fallback position is be person-centered,
Yes.
foundation, be with them, all your empathy, all the skills, listening skills, and all of that is where I just thought I just need to just jump in with that first and see how it develops really. And so I had to learn on the spot and again experientially develop with it. To be honest, I remember after a year or so, I thought, yeah, I think I can do it. I think I can do it. So it's always a bit daunting, really, to suddenly be faced with someone in the depth of their own grief, and it's still really difficult sometimes. Yesterday was really difficult with a particular person, for instance. So it never stops being difficult in places, But I remember after the first year, I thought, I've got this. I think I can do it. And I started to build a little bit of confidence. And I don't know how I managed to get through this year, but I had. And there's a kind of a funny story, really, with that. Went to a festival with my family in Carfest. I don't know if you've heard of Carfest. It's that Chris Evans one. Anyway, we went to this Carfest, and so it broke up for the summer. Had a week or two off, and I was stood in the rain watching. Who was it now? Sunshine Underneath, the Proclaimers. I think it was singing on stage, and it was raining, and my wife and young lad had gone to find a toilet, and I stood on my own under this umbrella listening to Sunshine Underneath by the Proclaimers. They were on stage, and I just felt this. I think I might have had a glass of wine or something, so I was feeling really happy and loving the moment, and I felt all this emotion come over me. I just felt it all welling up. I can feel it now, even talking to you about it. And I thought, oh no, don't get me now. And all of the clients that year was almost like your life flashes before your eyes when people say when they die. It was like that. All the clients came flashing up in front of me, and I felt all the emotion of it. I must have suppressed. And the tears were flooding out my eyes. I thought, oh no, so I'm hiding under the umbrella and feeling like I'm stuck in a crowd of people at this festival in front of the stage, and the music, and it all just wooed me too much. What must have been the wine, the music. It was warm but rainy, and it just felt lovely, and I just felt really good, and I dropped all my defences, and that was it. I was screwed at that point. I just couldn't stop crying for about an hour and a half, and my wife came back. What's the matter? What's the matter? I said, no, it's all fine, but I think I just need to leave. I couldn't leave because I had to wait for her to come back, otherwise she wouldn't find me. And so I remember that overwhelming emotion that came up at that point. And it took me a few hours to come down off it, really. It wasn't bad. It was beautiful, actually. It was lovely. It was really nice to feel all this emotion. But it made me think, you jumped in there in this job thinking you can just swan in and pick it up and run with it, and it's real people with real deep emotions. So after that, I always made sure that I allowed myself to feel the emotion in every session rather than just put it to one side.
Oh, wow.
And that's been fine ever since. Yeah, adjusted there. Yeah. So that was, I always remember that. It was a profound moment.
I was going to say, what a wonderful sort of story and experience when you talk about your development, because you can't get that unless you go through that, I guess, the fire of that experience, isn't it? Because you're talking about, this difference between doing a job, but really kind of allow you, because it is, isn't it? When you talk about working with people,
Really is,
and
yeah.
loss, isn't it? And you, no doubt, all that stuff is impacting you. You sat with them, and
You
it's
got to hold.
like say, yeah. So it became much more experiential. You allow yourself to feel in the moment much more with them now, as opposed to feeling like you've got to contain it, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
And that's shaping you. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
I'll just say sometimes you feel, some weeks you don't feel much because they're talking about something else. They're sorting out the finances and things like that. But other weeks or other moments, it's like you're in the real depth of the most deepest emotional trauma someone can ever be in. It's some really deep stories that, it's a fantastic privilege to be there in that room with them, where they share that depth of loss and grief. It's such a responsibility to sit and hold someone in that position, and they want you to hold them and not fall apart. So I never cry with them, but although sometimes I do, the tears come to my eyes, of course. But I have to kind of hold myself in some kind of professional way, but be human as well.
Yes,
it's a balance. Is that? Yeah.
And
Don't want me falling apart in front of them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think just the words that you're using, I think, are so powerful, because this is the bit which and I think it's so important, isn't it? Because you just to hear this, because you're using the words privilege. It's a privilege to sit with someone in the grief, and when you're talking about that, I think a lot of people come into counselling. It's like, oh, is it? Are they putting on you all this, that, and the other? But in actual fact, the work is a privilege that you sit with them through that. And it's so
trust that they put in you, they trust you so much. So please don't hurt me. I'm coming with you with a broken heart. Please be delicate and trust it so much. You just got to really hold that delicately. That's the privilege, really, that someone will come and trust you so much.
Yeah, that is the other aspect. Yeah, exactly. Underneath it, that relationship that's built, it's got to be the most profound trust, doesn't it? I think, because it's
really deep trust. Yeah.
So that's, I mean, absolutely wonderful to hear that, isn't it? Because I think just in terms of that experience and development, obviously, I say, you run a private practice on the side as well. Is that more a generic kind of therapy?
Yeah, that's 3 days at the hospice, 2.5 days private. I'm trying to add that up. Yeah, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Monday mornings. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Well, the hospice, there's a group as well, so that's why I start late on a Monday at the hospice. I work late because we have a bereavement group as well that I facilitate. So outside of that, 2.5 days private. When I work for the youth service, I work from 11 years up, 11 to 25-year-olds, let's say. But since working at the hospice, we work with children as well, up from about age 6, 7, some of them. So I've gained more experience with the younger end as well, who's bereaved. So that's broadened my experience as well. So I work now with. I don't like to work with them too young. They need to be for me anyway. I like to be able to engage somehow therapeutically with some young people. So I do use some kind of play therapy and that kind of thing. But I work now. Most of mine I get privately at the moment. Most of my clients are young men at the minute. it's weird. It's just strange how probably the last 10, 15 clients that have come my way, they've all been young men.
Oh, interesting.
It's just bizarre why that
Because
is happening.
I was
Yeah.
going to say, I mean, it's the client group which they say is usually the most resistant to therapy, but what
Yeah.
you're finding is
A
the
lot of men
opposite with
coming
yourself.
through. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And
That's a
it's
good thing.
interesting when you read about the most suicides are young men at the moment. Well, up to about 40-ish, 45. So I don't know whether there's any correlation there or not, but it seems like men seem to be going through this acceptance of therapy. Maybe it's going through some kind of existential crisis that young men might be going through, a little bit more these days. So I just don't know. It just maybe the universe sends you what you can
Yeah.
deal with it. Maybe it's
Yes,
that way. I don't
absolutely.
know. It's right
But
after this call. I need to ring another young man who's just come through. I just need to ring him up. So it's like a production line of young men at the minute.
wow,
Yeah,
and it's good to hear that, isn't it? It's like you say, because I think there's something about that, and again, if you go back 20 years in
yeah.
20, 30 years in therapy, it's like access to it was just very
No,
challenging,
there's
wasn't it? I
nothing
think
like that when I was a young lad. Anyway, I don't think. I
yeah.
don't remember anybody ever having therapy.
Could I just ask about because I was just thinking, obviously, like you say, you're working with sort of young people, because I think that is probably quite an area where I imagine if there has been, obviously a bereavement or something within a family. I mean, sometimes kids can get overlooked. I imagine, you know what I mean, in terms of the need for it.
Yeah,
In terms of this sort of play therapy you talk about, again, I know you're talking about the eclecticism, so I'm sure you just kind of touch on, but what kind of vein does that take, and does it depend on age specifically? Are you just
yeah.
attuning to where they're at there developmentally, or
Certainly that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, definitely that. You got to kind of. Well, there's a lot of autistic young people coming through. That's is it quadrupled? I think. Probably people with autism diagnosed. But not just young people, all ages really. So again, it tends to be coming across a lot of autistic people at the moment, young people especially. Yeah. So I don't have when they walk through the door. I don't have right. I know what I'm going to do with this young person before they come in. It's just
Mm,
a spontaneous. Let's get what's going on for you. What do you think you need? And sometimes a parent will come in to start with. So we'll do a session or two with both parents, with the parents and the young person, perhaps. Sometimes two parents and the young person, just to get an understanding of what's going on. So it
mhm,
takes a session or so just to get to the bottom of fully listening, fully engaging, stepping in their shoes, all of that empathy stuff. And then it'll just dawn on me. Okay, I can see where we're going here now. I can see where the problems might be,
mhm.
and I'll point that out. And so this is what it seems to be. Like for example, sorry, it's getting rid of a window that's popped up on my computer. Um, what was it? Yes, so an example could be someone who came in. Some autistic 9-year-old lad, and this was a past one. They wanted me to help this young person to be able to stop kicking and fighting and falling out with people. And it's probably because of his autism is what I was presented with
Mm,
the family and the young lad there. But it soon became apparent, like, yeah, there's autism, and that's having playing a factor. But this was a behavioural issue because he can control when he behaves this way. He's got some orchestration of this. He can turn it on and off, and he's got control of it. And because I could see it, he didn't know I could see it, yeah, but I could see it. I could see
mhm,
when he was turning it on and turning it off. And so when I pointed that out, this seems to be a behavioural issue, because he could see that I could see it. He's like, oh, I don't want to come anymore. So he backed off because I was onto him, basically. And so I worked with Mum for a while, did a couple of sessions with Mum to see if she could maybe try this, try that, get some reward system in place, reward positive behaviour. Don't you can work on punishing bad behaviour, or you can work on rewarding good behaviour, Anyway, we got this process in place. She started it for a couple of weeks, and then he came back. The lad came back because things were going okay now. He didn't mind that I knew that it was behavioural, because his life's got better. So the conflicts had eased off. So he was okay to come now. I'm not a threat to him, because he had control over that. Wow. And now he hasn't got control over it, but he's safe, and his life's better. So I could work with him on his own then for a few weeks. So you couldn't repeat that for the next young person who comes along.
It's very complex. It's very unique. Complex.
Yeah.
And again, you're not just help. So it's actually, you're talking about kind of, there's an aspect there, wasn't it? Because you're working with the mum as well, and sort of talking about parenting. Because again, parenting is incredibly challenging, isn't it? In terms of, you talk about behavior management and motivations and getting people on board. That I think some people are sometimes born with natural skills in that area, but I think it's the majority of it is quite challenging. So you actually sort of coach, it's like coaching, parenting, sort of training in some ways, and working together with them. So wow, that's phenomenal.
That's why I couldn't stick with one model of counselling, right? Because I could let you go now because you don't fit my model, and that would be it. Or I could just adjust, learn how to help in a different way. But everybody's the same. We all end up in this moment of an accumulation of all our experiences, I guess, aren't we? And if you bump into somebody and you've got some understanding of what's going on, why wouldn't you use that?